This is an eerie photograph captured by 9 hikers. Moments later, they would all be dead. 2 of them were found with traces of abnormal radiation. 4 seemed to have suffered brutal physical attacks. And one of them was found missing her tongue. Nearby lay a secret Soviet military base. The official explanation? An avalanche. But obviously no one bought it. Was this the work of a natural phenomenon? A yeti? Or was the nearby base conducting a military experiment straight out of Stranger Things? And the sole survivor of this incident, what exactly did he witness? Hello everyone, I'm Eggplant. Welcome to the video. Today we are digging into a mystery that was sealed away by the Soviet Union for 30 years. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. Our story begins with a heavy snowfall in 1959. A team of hikers was formed at the Ural Polytechnical Institute in the Soviet Union. It consisted of 8 young men and 2 women. Their plan? A mountaineering expedition to the northern Urals. Although everyone was young, they all held grade 2 hiking certifications. Their expertise was undeniable. Their leader was a man named Igor Dyatlov, the very man this incident would later be named after. On January 23rd, the group of 10 officially set off from the institute. And so, our story officially begins. As you can see from the photos, they were in high spirits along the way, thoroughly enjoying the journey. No one could have predicted the horror that was about to unfold. They planned to reach Mount Otorten in the Ural Mountains. In the local indigenous language, Otorten literally translates to, "Don't go there." Shortly after departing, one of the boys, Yuri Yudin, fell ill. Suffering from joint pain, he was forced to end his trip and turn back. Fatefully, he would become the sole survivor of this entire event. The remaining 9 continued their push toward Mount Otorten. On January 31st, they arrived at the foot of the mountains and cached some supplies. The next day, February 1st, they officially entered the mountain pass. From this moment on, they would never send another message to the outside world. They were scheduled to return by the 12th of that month, but people waited and waited. By February 20th, there was still complete radio silence. Yuri, the member who had returned early, finally realized something was wrong. He urgently rallied the families of the hikers to contact the police. Soon, the military intervened and launched a carpet search of the area. But this search? It was terrifying. Because initially, there was absolutely no trace of them on the mountain. It wasn't until 6 days later, on February 26th, that rescue workers found the track of a ski in the snow. Following this trail, they realized it led to a different mountain entirely, Kolotsiakol. Near Kolotsiakol live the indigenous Mansi people. And in the Mansi language, Kolotsiakol means dead mountain. This meant the hikers, for some unknown reason, had changed their course. They went from the mountain of "Don't go there" directly to Dead Mountain. The search team rushed to Kolotsiakol. On an eastern slope, they discovered an abandoned tent. It was identified as Dyatlov's tent. It had been crushed by snow, but it was empty. Strangely, the tent had been slashed open. Forensic analysis later confirmed it was cut from the inside. This implies that the people inside were in a state of sheer panic. They didn't even have time to unzip the entrance. They had to cut their way out with a knife to escape. Inside the tent, searchers found clothes, shoes, and socks. Many had fled without their gear. Why leave in such a hurry? What on earth happened? Next, searchers found a trail of footprints leading away from the tent. Judging by the prints, most were barefoot or wearing only socks walking in the snow. But here's the contradiction. Experts analyzed the footprints and found that they weren't running frantically. Instead, they were walking, step by step, at a normal pace. It makes no sense. It was an emergency urgent enough to slash open a tent, yet they walked away calmly? Driving by this question, the rescue team followed the footprints. About 1.5 kilometers away, near the edge of a forest, they found a large cedar tree. Under the cedar, they found the remains of a campfire and 2 bodies. These were 2 members of the Dyatlov team. They were severely underdressed. Remember, the temperature that night dropped to minus 40 degrees. Why wear so little in such freezing weather? Even stranger, their bodies showed signs of 3rd-degree burns. The team continued searching from the cedar tree. About 800 meters away, in a snowy ravine, they found 3 more bodies, including the leader, Dyatlov. The direction they had fallen was bizarre. They were all found facing toward the tent. According to the autopsy reports, all 5 died from hypothermia. 4 of them died while intoxicated. Now, I need to address a disturbing detail. Why were many of the victims found almost naked in the freezing snow? This is actually a symptom of hypothermia known as paradoxical undressing. In extreme cold, the nerves are damaged and send confusing signals to the brain. This causes a sudden, false sensation of intense heat. Victims, in their delirium, instinctively rip off their clothes to cool down. So, 5 were dead from hypothermia. But there were 9 hikers. Where were the other 4? More than 2 months later, in May, searchers found a thawed stream about 75 meters further into the woods. There, they found the remaining 4 bodies. But the condition of these 4 was completely different from the first 5. They didn't just die of cold, they suffered fatal internal injuries. 1 had a fractured skull. 2 had multiple broken ribs and severe internal bleeding. And most horrific of all, the 4th member, a woman. Her tongue and eyes were missing. Forensics found blood in her stomach, suggesting she might have still been alive when her tongue was removed. To add to the mystery, the military detected abnormal levels of radiation on their clothing. Some witnesses at the funeral claimed the victim's skin had turned a deep, unnatural shade of orange-red, a classic sign of radiation exposure. Why did hikers have radioactive material on them? With all these clues, the cause of death became impossible to pin down. In August 1959, after a fruitless investigation, the Soviet police concluded the deaths were caused by a compelling natural force. The authorities immediately sealed off Kolatsiakal, banning entry for 3 years. Everyone thought this would remain a cold case forever. But in 1990, letters written by the lead investigator, Lev Ivanov, were made public by his family. These letters opened up several dark possibilities. Ivanov was the chief official on the case. Back then, the incident had gained global attention. To protect the Soviet image, High Command pressured him to close the case quickly. He wanted to go with the avalanche theory, but he found no evidence of an avalanche. If it were an avalanche, the tent wouldn't have just collapsed. It would have been buried meters deep. And how could an avalanche selectively remove a woman's tongue? So, he ruled that out. In his letters, Ivanov wrote that the team most likely encountered a UFO, an alien attack. Why? Autopsies put the time of death on the night of February 1st. That same night, a geological team camped 50 kilometers away reported seeing glowing orange spheres floating in the sky. The very last photo on Dyatlov's camera is blurry and looks rushed, but it clearly shows a bright spot of light. This matches the witness accounts. Of course, flashlight or a campfire. So, this theory lacks hard proof. Since neither the avalanche nor the aliens theory satisfied the Soviet higher-ups, Ivanov kept digging. The deeper he went, the more he suspected the Soviet military. He discovered a military testing ground nearby, used for missile launches. Perhaps the bad weather forced the hikers off course, straight into a testing zone. Maybe a missile test that night caused the orange lights, the burns, the radiation, and the blast-like internal injuries. And think about it. Why did the military even think to test hikers for radiation in the first place? It implies they knew something. But when Ivanov started looking into the military, he touched a nerve. He was summoned to Moscow. When he returned, he immediately closed the case, citing that unknown compelling force. We may never know what happened in Moscow. In 2019, the Russian government released more files, but they were filled with redactions and edited dates. The investigation's start date was listed as February 6th, 2 weeks before the hikers were even reported missing. It's as if they knew. Although Ivanov believed until his death that the military was involved, there are holes in that theory too. If the Soviet military did it, they had the power to make the hikers disappear completely. They wouldn't leave so much evidence behind. Another popular theory is the Yeti. Locals have legends of a forest giant. In the cedar forest, branches were snapped off up to 5 meters high, as if the hikers climbed the tree, desperately trying to escape something below. One photo even shows a dark figure that looks like an ape. But no animal tracks were ever found. Then there is the infrasound theory, or the Kármán vortex street. American filmmaker Donnie Eicher proposed that the wind hitting the mountain's unique shape created a low-frequency hum. This infrasound can cause panic attacks and hallucinations in humans, explaining why they slashed the tent and fled in terror. However, in 2021, researchers Gome and Puzrin published a study that brings us back to the start: the slab avalanche. They calculated that this wasn't a massive snowslide, but a small, solid block of snow that shifted. Digging the tent into the slope destabilized the snow. The blizzard added weight. Eventually, a slab, hitting with the force of a car, slammed into the tent. This caused the brutal rib fractures. The survivors cut the tent to drag their injured friends out. This explains the lack of massive avalanche debris. As for the burns, they likely fell into their own fire after dying. The radiation? One hiker had worked at a nuclear facility. It could be residue on his clothes. The missing tongue? Scavengers and decomposition over 2 months. It's the most logical answer. But does it explain everything? Or maybe, some mysteries are meant to stay frozen. Thanks for watching. Before you click away, don't forget to like and subscribe for more mysteries. See you in the next one.